Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, all gallery members and staff. Welcome, Sarmad from Parkland. I call the meeting to order at 1:03 p.m. And I would ask council at this time if you have any added items to the agenda. Seeing none then, I will move to item B, adoption of the agenda, please. Yes, Deputy Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I'd make the motion that we adopt the agenda for the regular council meeting agenda for Monday, February 13th, 2023 at 1 p.m.
Thank you. Any questions? I'll ask for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Now I will turn over to my CAO for comments to be shared.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And to address those people in the gallery and online, I'm assuming most of you aren't here to speak to the amendment for the daycare into the commercial sector. So in an item, which is number 9, I will be sharing information on the town's 2018 Smart City Challenge application. So it will take us 30 or so minutes to get down there, my reckoning. The land use bylaw will come shortly. If you have any questions on that or wish to speak, we do ask that you put your name forward to Legislative Clerk Marcy here, as we record that for the public record. But again, that's just for this daycare amendment piece. The Smart Cities Challenge piece, I will bring that up on item number 9. So with that clarification, happy to, of course, take questions from council if they have it, because this is somewhat impromptu. But if nothing else, we're good to move to our next item.
You, CAO Williams. I hope that we can make this work smoothly and quickly so you can get to your area of interest. Right now, item C, proclamations and announcements, we have none. So now we'll go to page 3 of the agenda, item 2A, regular council meeting minutes of January 23rd. May I get a motion on the floor? Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council approves the minutes from the January 23rd, 2023 regular council meeting as adopted and presented.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. Does council have any questions, errors, or omissions? Seeing none then, I will ask for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item 3, business arising from the minutes. Seeing none, we'll move down to item 4, please. Delegations and presentations. That's page 9 of the agenda, item 4A. Just a note for council, we have 2 requests for decisions we will be making motions on. One is on page 9 and one page 17, but they all deal with the same interest of business. CAO Williams, who will be speaking to this?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I'll turn over to Director Andrew, who's with us today.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I'd like to introduce Brian Powell, our Director of Emergency Management, to also come to the podium, can also co-speak with this. But the first request for decision that you're seeing is a formality of housekeeping that we are asking for the removal of the appointment of Jamie Vassar, who was a Deputy Director of Emergency Management for the town, and that was due to his leaving employment with us. So,
Like to deal with that first before we go to the business and then the second request for decision?
yes, please, if that would please council.
Okay, thank you very much. Director Andrews, I would ask for if you could please go to page 9 of your agenda, which is the emergency management appointments. Who would like to put that motion on the floor, please? Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council remove Jamie Vassar from the position of Deputy Director of Emergency Management, DDEM, for the Town of Olds, effective February 13th, 2023.
Council have any further questions before I call the vote? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Those in favor? That is carried very much. Thank you, Council, and I'll direct Director Andrew. It's your turn to go for the Rest of the business.
Great, thank you very much. Again, I'm going to turn this over to Brian Powell, our Director of Emergency Management. Basically, Brian is here today to give council update on emergency management function over the last year, and part of our legislative requirement to meet Alberta Emergency Management Guidelines and the Emergency Act is to keep council apprised of activities of emergency management and to update our emergency response plan. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Mr. Powell.
Thank you, Chief Andrew, Your Worship, council members. I guess this is our annual review, bring this information to you. You may recall I was here last January, give you an update, quick overview on what we ended up doing. And part of our, as Chief Andrew mentioned, is our requirement to update our emergency response plan, maintain that compliance piece, and then if there's any changes, as there is, to positions and how we're going to recommend we address those things. And I think if you read in the body of that piece, that's covered on how we're going to keep that position vacant at that time, this time. And we have the ability to capacity to maintain our compliance with AEMA and SEMP. So quick overview throughout the year. Of course, it's ongoing maintenance and keep maintaining the ERP and keeping track of the people that are coming and going from this big list of individuals. That attrition is a big part of it. And those of you who know me know that I mentioned that our ERP has a shelf life of a plate of bananas. It's stale pretty quickly, so we have to update it fairly often. So basically, we saw a bit of a void on enhancing our skill levels with awareness of ICS, Incident Command System. So we took it upon ourselves to take the trainer part, and so for that we can bring the ICS 200 in-house and save some money and energy and focus on doing some in-house training. First class is scheduled this week. Actually, we're gonna have a few individuals from the community. Sorry. Can you hear me? How's that? Is that it? Is that better? Okay, our first class is scheduled for this week. These things don't extend tall enough, I'm just saying. Okay. Thanks. Our first class of ICS 200 is scheduled for this week. So we have a number of individuals augmented with 50% industry to help reduce the costs. DDEM's participated in their compliance for DEM courses this year, and we're ongoing maintaining our database for ICS positions. Throughout reception centers were set up twice this year, once in January and again in November for major highway incidents, one involving a large major livestock emergency that went along and coincided with a reception center at Pomeroy for displaced individuals. We stood up an emergency coordinated center and put the arena on standby for possible large-scale reception center during the tornado threat that was spooling up in the Bergen area. Initial information was given that it had not dissipated and it had the potential to move east, and we were east of them. So I had some great conversations with ORE at the time, and they took it upon themselves to recognize that the farmers market that was on play at the time was a potential serious threat. So they took it upon themselves to close the farmers market early and dissipate that crowd. So fortunately, that didn't materialize, and we stood everything down right away. And we did a couple reviews on mock emergencies. Whitecap, just south of us, did a complete mock emergency, and we were asked to participate with that as well in an observation setting. And then to maintain compliance with our SEMP guidelines with AEMA, that we had to host a tabletop. We did that in November, and we simulated a long durative event of a service interruption where feedstock gas, natural gas, in a simulation was lost to this community for weeks. And so a lot of learns after action review came out of that, and that met with our compliance for the year. So that was a piece that we finished for 2002-03 season.
Thank you very much. Are you open to some questions?
Absolutely.
Good. I'd ask the council members if you have anything you'd like to add for a question. Thank you. And we'll go with Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dolan, through you to Director Powell there. This is new, and I assume that the redaction due to FOIP is because this is a public document, but the original document that you people work from would have all the adequate, because on that note, I noticed there's a few little housekeeping things with restaurants and such that
Absolutely,
you
yeah.
regularly update this and,
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes. Yeah. The carryovers of, the piece on those initial contact informations are
an ongoing process?
ongoing process.
Okay,
yeah.
that's good, thank you. I'll leave it up to then someone else, I got a couple more.
Thank you, Councillor Blatz. Deputy Mayor Wilson, and then we'll go to Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I just had a question, Brian, and thanks for the report. You mentioned we had a tabletop exercise in November. Are we planning, and you had performed a role as observer for mock for third-party organizations. Are we ourselves planning any mock, or are we required to do a mock in 2023?
We're not required for 2023, but on or before 2024, we are. So we're going to put together our pieces and make a decision on whether we're going to do that preemptively this year or not. We are working as our partners, Mountain View Regional Emergency Management Agency, which is the host group of all the partners in the community. They have one as well that they have in the schedule, so we would not want to double up on a mock training session on the same year.
Okay, thank you.
So Ryan?
Thank you very much, Mayor Dahl. I just have one question, and that is, how do people get in on your lists? Like, I know that you have the restaurants, you have veterinary clinics and whatnot. So what is the process to inform you as to additions or subtractions off of these lists? And is it provided to the public so that they can look at it and say, okay, well, I have a business that could help out in an emergency, and who would I contact, and how's that process go?
So we lean on our community here with our business licensing piece as well and see who is available. But for the update piece, it's done in-house where we'll look after it ourselves. There's no requirement of the public to come back and say we want to be inserted or taken out of the emergency response plan. However, the door is always open and our desks are always available if someone has an interest in wanting to put their pieces together, whether it be their community or whether it be the individuals. There's a lot of nuggets in this community that have a lot of great deal of background in ICS. And this is where the goal this year is to reach out to service groups and larger populations if they have an interest in ICS. And we're gonna actually target those individuals and see what they have available for us to make this a little bit better document.
Supplemental, and then we'll move forward.
Thank you, Mayor Dole. Just a supplemental to that, Brian. Could you tell me, like, would somebody then who has sort of extensive first aid treatment, background, or somebody who's a safety manager, or somebody who even has a service that could help, would they contact the town office, or would they contact the fire department? Which was the best way to go for them?
I would encourage them to channel through the fire department and contact us through the emergency management agency in town. If that's the direction they'd like to, it'd be the quickest to have a conversation with us.
Super, thank you.
Councillor Daly, and then Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Mayor Dole. Just going along with Councillor Blatz, notice new to you is still in your plan as well, so it's a bit of a close peek. And the other thing is, you were speaking of training, and so. There we go. Button sticky. So as far as with training, is there any kind of refresher that council can do for the ICF 100 level? I know we did do a training session back last fall, but I'd really appreciate being able to participate in something like that as well.
Absolutely. It clearly is a perishable skill, and if you're not involved in those types of incident discussions, you do fall outside the swim lanes often. You're more than welcome to take it again if you want to take the ICS 100. We'd be happy to put that together for you for a refresher. But some of the pieces that we deal with on a more regular basis with the fire department are the standard initial ICS background pieces that are already in existence. When they deal with the type 5s, 4s, and 3s incidents that they deal with every day. And so I guess to have some exposure to some of those avenues may be a bit of a start for you to see how it will eventually morph into those. But I can communicate with the AEMA reps and see if there's a refresher and update for elected officials, which I think there is. I do remember them talking about refreshers they do have for them. Might put you in the room with some county councilors. I'm not sure whether that's what you want to do or not.
Thank you, Brian. And Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Mayor. You mentioned, Brian, after action reports. I know that because we're part of the Alberta Emergency Management Agency or group, you're probably going to get after action reports of real incidents that occur in Alberta. Do we have access, or do you guys have access to those after action reports from outside of Alberta? And the reason why I put that up is, of course, the headline news stories of the derailment that had occurred in Ohio, where the rail track, of course, goes through us, and in your plan, rail incidents are a higher risk hazard than we see. And although we have derailments in Alberta, I say, do we have access to those after action reports from a greater avenue than just ourselves?
Canada, yes. It's a little longer to get from the United States, but some of these bigger incidents will be available to the public. We have all of the major after action reviews. We can pull out the Keno fire from Fort McMurray right now, and that exists in the public domain now to get access.
Thank you. Any further questions from council at this time? Very good. Thank you very much for your presentation. And at this time, I'd like you to turn to page 17 of your agenda, please. I'm looking for two motions, and I'd ask for the motion for the first. We'll start with Councillor Ryan and then Deputy Mayor Wilson.
Thank you very much, Mayor Dahl. I move the council approve the Emergency Response Plan, ERP, as presented.
Again, any questions, comments? I will call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. And number 2, please. Deputy Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I make the motion that council accept the emergency management update as presented for information.
Thank you. No questions? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we will move to the next item on our agenda. We are at the public hearing, page 216 of your agenda. It was good reading this weekend for council members. And item number 5A. I will start with a comment, and then prior to declaring the public hearing open, our CAO will once again add a further comment as well. So, pecuniary interest for municipal councillors. Section 172 of the Municipal Government Act says that you may not take part in the discussion or decision-making on any matter in which you have a pecuniary interest. The legislation attempts to ensure that you are not discriminated either for or against by virtue of your membership on council. If you have a pecuniary interest, you are to disclose that you have an interest and its general nature. You are to abstain from any discussion of the matter and from voting. You are to leave the room until the matter has been dealt with, and you should make sure that you abstain in abstention is recorded in the minutes. You are not to be discriminated against and are entitled to participate in a public hearing as a member of the public. I'll now turn it over to the CEO for a brief comment before I declare the public hearing open.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And with us today is Sarmad from Parkland Community Planning Services. They are, for the members of the gallery and those watching online, Parkland is an intermunicipal planning, regional planning service based in Red Deer. The town has been a member for some time now. Just to preface for a brief moment our land use bylaw. This is a question we've received fairly plentiful over the last 2 weeks of, what is it? What does it do? Are you changing it? Why is it being amended? So land use bylaw basically sets parameters for planning and development in the town of Olds, whether that be zoning or for property uses, et cetera, et cetera. It's part of a larger hierarchy of statutory plans. Land use bylaws are actually only in the middle of the hierarchy, something called intermunicipal development plans and municipal development plans are actually higher, meaning that the LUB has to conform to those two plans. The land use bylaw must also not contradict localized plans, which we refer to as area structure plans or area redevelopment plans. So they are part of a larger connected web of statutory planning documents. And if there's disagreements over council or administration's decisions, there's the province sets out two avenues. One is a subdivision development appeal board, which hears complaints from property owners or affected parties who disagree with council or administration's decisions. The second thing is a land and property rights tribunal, which replaced something called the municipal government board several years ago. That's for a different type of property, largely industrial commercial property. For the same thing, those who disagree with municipal decision-making can voice concerns and have a quasi-judicial body overturn or agree with the municipal decision. So why are we here today? This is an amendment to the land use bylaw. Our land use bylaw was passed, I believe, in 1998. Since that time, there's been over 200 amendments to the bylaw. Now, I'm sure many of you are familiar with Thorhild County and what happened up there. So Thorhild County went through what we would phrase as a rewrite or a examination of the land use bylaw, where they basically rewrote it. Now, that hasn't happened in the town of Olds for 25 years or so, and there's no plans to do it right now. This basically is an amendment which happens several times a year to basically, I don't want to say right or wrong, but certainly correct something that wasn't envisioned in 1998. In this case, it is the fact that daycares are not permitted uses in a strip mall, commercial building. And right now we have a daycare operator who wishes to operate a daycare in a local strip mall. That can't happen until we amend the bylaw. So that's the purpose of that today. So with that, if there's questions on the procedures or the purpose or the premise of bylaws or MDPs or IDPs and all these acronyms that very few people quite rightly don't care about or understand, we're happy to answer those questions. Email, phone call, whatever is the preference. But for now, for the land use bylaw at hand, this amendment, I'm going to turn over to Sarmad prior to the public hearing being opened, and he can provide us with the particulars that I am not good enough to explain myself.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Just one more. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I now declare the public hearing open at 1:27 p.m. This is for bylaw 2023-02, amendment to the land use bylaw. I will now ask the development officer to explain the purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw. Sarmad, please move forward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to reiterate, as CEO Williams said, the purpose of this presentation is solely for the proposed amendment to allow a daycare commercial facility as a permitted use within the shopping center commercial district, the CSC district. With that said, the context of this application is within 4513 52 Avenue, and this is the strip mall located at that site. More specifically, units 16A and 16B. Currently, if anybody wants to apply for a daycare commercial use, they will have to apply for a site-specific amendment every time, and it can get a little bit redundant. And we propose that instead of allowing a site-specific exception, which would meet the intent of the applicant, we propose that a recommended alternative would be to allow for a daycare facility commercial as a permitted use in general in the shopping center commercial district. It's a common practice among municipalities in Alberta. It's Calgary, Edmonton, and other municipalities. It's not uncommon to go to a strip mall and see a daycare facility operating out of there. And we would like something similar, and the reason for that is because it is deemed to be a compatible use. Now I will review this proposed amendment amongst the town's statutory bylaws, and we will begin with the Town of Olds Municipal Development Plan. Now, the MDP identifies the parcels for highway and local commercial use, but it does differ more specific areas for more specific uses for the subject area to the Uptown Area Redevelopment Plan. The Uptown ARP identifies the subject lot as highway commercial, and the intent of this area is to maintain and expand the commercial area. And a daycare commercial use would meet the intent of the Uptown ARP. So under the land use bylaw, the strip mall is identified as shopping center commercial district. And it's interesting to note that it is the only CSC district across the whole town of Olds. And the allowed uses within the district are portrayed in Schedule C. And although there are a variety of uses allowed within the district, daycare facility commercial is neither permitted or discretionary. And here are the permitted uses within this district. As you may notice, there is quite a bit, but there is no commercial daycare. Bylaw 2023-02 received first reading on January 9th. We have submitted this application for referrals to adjacent landowners, to agencies, and to the internal department within the town of Olds, and to date, we have received no comments or objections. Once again, I would like to reiterate that the purpose of this presentation is to allow for a daycare facility commercial use to be a permitted use within the shopping center commercial district. And with that, I would like to conclude my presentation.
Thank you. You may be seated while we go through the process for the gallery. As we may have the applicant may be here, I'm not sure. We have a full gallery, and we will go through the full process because of that. So I will now explain the procedure rules to be followed. First of all, before I even go for this, I could save some time if I knew. Do we have individuals in the gallery that will be speaking to this daycare facility? Do we have the applicant? We don't? Well, then I don't really need to go through the procedure if we don't have to worry about anybody coming to the mic to speak for your daycare facility application. All right. If that's the case, then we did have a process that we would have to follow for procedure and rules, and then I would typically go through calling twice for support, opposed, and deemed defected. At this point, we're past that. There's nobody here. I've asked the question. I didn't see anybody stand with regards to the daycare facility, so I will now open the floor to council comments or questions. Seeing none, then, I will ask the development officer one more time for final comments for closing, if he so wishes. Armad?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's no comments as of this moment. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Armand, and traveling to Olds to be with us today. I now declare the public hearing closed for bylaw 2023-02 at 1:33 p.m. I would ask council now at this time to go back to page 216 in your agenda. And I'm looking for second reading, please. Okay, we've got two people, so I'll get Councillor Cummings for second and Councillor Blatz for third. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that council give second reading to bylaw number 2023-02.
Does council have further questions? I'll call the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Third and final reading, Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move the council gives third and final reading to bylaw 2023-02.
I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. And thank you once again for traveling to Olds today. You bet. Moving down to item 6, bylaws. We have none. Moving down to item 7, new business, page 228, 7A, Council Policy 114, proclamations. CEO Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. This issue was brought to February's PMP meeting on the 6th, and the direction was to bring it back to regular council for consideration based on the draft that you've seen. So this policy, for those in the gallery and online who are unfamiliar, it's switching council's policy from accepting proclamations, declaring proclamations for specific weeks, events, causes, to essentially saying that we will no longer declare proclamations and instead switch to a just more selective promotional events advertised on town mediums. And those events are to be largely based around municipal type interests.
Williams, would you like to just share the background while we have such a crowd in our gallery of why, maybe starting with the amount of proclamations we were receiving, which were quite extensive?
Sure. So I guess to be blunt, there's so many specialized days, causes, holidays, et cetera, coming up in recent years that administration's recommendation to the council was around concern that eventually we're going to say no to a proclamation or a cause very important and dear to someone, whether that be Save the Rainbows Day or I Love Pandas Day, whatever it might be. I'm being a bit facetious now. But given that there's a growing number of proclamations, they do take time to prepare and present and whatnot, that it seemed more proactive to get out of the proclamation issuing business and focus on promoting municipal related events. So those events would include such things as Fire Prevention Week, National Day of Mourning, which is WCB related, National Indigenous Peoples Day, which the town is involved funding, and things that the town funds, of course, aligns that well. But more or less it was to both expedite council meeting time, reduce staff time in preparation, but primarily to make sure we don't get caught in saying no to proclamations and being seen as, disagreeing with a proclamation or an event or a cause, when really it's just trying to triage and treat everyone as equally as possible. So.
Very good. I would call for a motion to be put on the floor for this, please. I believe Councillor Daly had his hand up prior. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council approve the revised council policy 114C proclamations as presented.
Would council have any added questions prior to the vote? All right, moving forward, I will call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. I will move down to item 7B, page 230, please. And this is request for cancellation of tax penalty roll numbers. CEO Williams?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I'll handle this one as well. The recommendation on this is that council receive it for information, which is essentially turning down the request to have the tax penalties forgiven. The recommendation's not based on our feeling of validity or lack thereof. It's more of the procedure that the municipality generally follows for late payment of taxes. There is a redacted letter attached just to protect the identity of the business owners, but essentially it is asking for forgiveness from council based on financial challenges and related to COVID coming out of the pandemic, etc. But unless council has other direction to give, it's to receive for information or turn down.
Thank you for pulling that up on the screen. I would ask for a motion to get this on the floor, please. Okay, we've got Councillor Ryan. It was a tie.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council receives for information the RFD requesting the cancellation of the tax penalty on roll number 4605200 and 4600500.
Thank you. Now, does council have further questions for our CEO? Seeing none then, I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We're moving down to item number 7C, page 233, tax recovery sale conditions. Once again, CEO Williams.
Thank you again. Council has considered this already in late 2022. This is a ask to rescind the previous motion and readjust the terms of sale for one of the properties coming to our tax recovery sale in March of this year. The property in question has a reserve bid of around $2.8 million and is currently under a court order issued by the town for outstanding taxes, largely due to unpaid utility bills, but also just arrears in taxes, unpayment of those, approaching $500,000, maybe a bit higher. The issue that we want to make potential buyers aware that there are significant infrastructure issues within this property, and that any potential buyer has to understand that the town has an enforcement order in place, it has gone to court, and that we expect repairs to be made post haste according to that process. So essentially, the buyer beware, but the buyer hopefully is informed, and this is what this change to the tax sale conditions hoping to do.
CEO Williams, I would just add that for the sake for council that the rescinding motion 2313 would be the same as the upper portion of your new motion. The new motion states an addition of item 4. That's what the difference is. So I would ask for a motion to rescind 2313, please. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that council rescind motion 23-13. You want me
Thank
to
you.
continue?
No, we'll do that separately. Thank you. Are there any further questions with regards to rescinding 2013? I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Now we have the new motion on the floor. Who would like to do that? Oh, good. It's quite a lengthy one. Councillor Blatz, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, thank you. I move that council sets the terms and conditions of the tax recovery sale scheduled for Tuesday, March 28th, 2023 at 2 p.m. in the Town of Olds Council chambers as follows. Number 1, these properties are being offered for sale on an as-is, where-is basis. Number 2, these properties are being offered for sale subject to a reserve bid and to the reservations and conditions contained in the existing certificate of title. Number 3, payment of successful bid shall be made by cash or certified check payable to the Town of Olds, a non-refundable deposit of 20% at the time of sale, with the balance of 80% of the bid due within 10 days. Number 4, the lands legally described as Plan 70663JK, Lot A, are currently the subject of a notice of required action issued by the Town of Olds pursuant to Section 37 of the Municipal Government Act. Due to the Town of Olds' lack of satisfaction with this construction, maintenance, or repair of a service connection of a municipal utility located above or underneath a parcel of land. The Town of Olds intends to pursue remedies, including but not necessarily limited to those found at Sections 37 and 39 of the Municipal Government Act, and to have the construction, maintenance, or repair of the service connection brought to standards satisfactory to the Town of Olds. The remedies may be pursued by the Town of Olds. The remedies to be pursued by the Town of Olds also include having the costs of completing the required work to the service connection to be paid by the registered owner of the lands legally described as Plan 70663JK Lot A in accordance with the Municipal Government Act.
Well done, Councillor Blatz. Thank you very much. You have the information now on the floor. Any final comments? I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Page 235, please, of your agenda. This is item 7D, sponsorship request, Olds and District Kiwanis Music Festival. Before we move forward with this, I do have a question for administration. In reading this, twofold. The first question is, in this request for decision on the floor today, it states the 2023 request increased to $1,200. That does not reflect what's in this request for decision. And secondly, I pulled the resolution from 2022 with CAO Merritt when he spoke to this motion that was put on the floor by our council then. It was noted that the Town of Olds has supported this event for many years, as they have in their letter. It was indicated that a sponsorship review will be done and brought forward to council during the service level review. I believe we had some discussions, but I cannot quite recall. However, the point of that was to ensure we are accounting for sponsorship properly. These people have never asked for an increase from $1,000 since, and it's been over 40 years, and they bring thousands of people to our community. I just wanted to bring that back to your attention. So, C.A. Williams, can you help me understand what that means? 2023 request, it increased to $1,200, but yet it doesn't reflect that in our request for decision.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Yeah, I can speak to that. So the recommendation states $1,000. The request was $1,200. That is largely the fact that our budget for sponsorship has not increased. So keeping status quo across our general contributions to these organizations seems most prudent, and that's what is reflected in administration's recommendation. Of course, if council deems this event program worthy, it's your prerogative. Just remind, administration can grant sponsorship dollars in amounts below $1,000. Anything above that, at or above that, comes to council. But hope that answers your question.
Yes, I understand. I'm reading the letter that's in this package. It states December 10, 2022 on the letter date, and their past donation was $1,000. So did you have a verbal conversation with them that they asked for $1,200? Their request. So what you're saying is this is their request for 23 verbally?
Yes, correct.
Thank you for that clarity. Does council have questions? Councillor Walsh.
No questions, but I would like to make a motion that the sponsorship of $1,200 for the 2023 Olds and District Kiwanis Music Festival be approved.
Thank you for your motion on the floor at this time. I'll leave more comments or questions to council. Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dole. I just wanted to make a comment with regards to this, and that is I agree with CEO Williams that we have a budget set in place, and we shouldn't, we do have lots of requests that come through to us every year. This is at the beginning of the year. We start, giving away too much at the beginning. We won't have enough to satisfy all the donation requests later on in the year. I'm happy with the $1,000. Thanks.
Counselor Walsh?
I can respond to that and agree. Since 2021, when I first come on council, it was always $1,000. And you're right, it's been the same for this amount of years, so $1,200 is not a lot of money to go towards the Kiwanis Music Festival, and I'm sure their costs have increased substantially since then. So, no, I would stick to $1,200. It's not a huge impact on the budget at all.
Thank you very much. I concur. They bring, and it's very clear, it's their 40th anniversary as well. And in my opinion, if we can't grant them the extra 200 for the 40th anniversary, with the amount of people they bring to this town, that parking lot, you can't get in it when the music festival's on. So I'd ask if there are any further comments. If none, we do have a motion on the floor, and council, you make that decision, for sure. So I will call for the vote. The motion on the floor is for $1,200. I call for the vote. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. Reports, item 8, reports from council, boards, commissions, and committees. None. We are now on page 237. We are on item 9, CAO report and action list. I will move this to CAO Williams. And thank you for your patience. I thought we got through it quite quickly.
I think people disagree now.
That's fast for us.
I think I'll run through just these few things quickly. The action item list is on there. I only added one from PMP, which I did not attend. It's just some clarification on the motion for the CSB bylaw review. What was brought forward to council was essentially, save for a couple minor items, kind of just a re-amalgamation of existing council bylaws. So the thought was to bring potential changes to service levels to service level review in late March, early April, once we schedule it. So just to understand my question to council, was that intention to review the existing bylaws in their entirety, or potential changes to those bylaws? So that's what I didn't quite grasp. So council has bylaws in the books right now. Do you want to review those existing bylaws before we even talk about our changes?
Thank you. This is the time that council, oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to go right, left. You have to learn to scan when you're sitting here. Councillor Cummings, please go forward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since I'm the one who started this whole process during the PMP meeting. So the idea was here is that we were and a clarification I guess is needed. We were presented with this bylaw, amalgamated bylaw or parts of a bylaw, and it had already gone through legal and process, and administration had come up with this workaround with the anticipation of making changes to it coming forward. I think that entire conversation, not only the amalgamation of the bylaws, but also any future changes of those particular bylaw, again, because it's like we've seen in some of the bylaws here today, they're 1 or 2 pages. This one, I believe, was 55 pages long. It covered a lot of I hate to say conflict areas in the way we do things in the town, but a very highly debated issue amongst our citizenry. So I think it has to have some input from us before any sort of changes get made into it from the administration side. So I would say yes to your question, that it was more of a, here's the bylaw that you want us to eventually end up with. We'd like to have some more say in that rather than administration come present us something that may be going in the wrong direction that this council wants to have. Let's get some council input on it before you waste all your time doing something, or may waste your time doing something that isn't the council's wish for that bylaw to go into, in the direction the bylaw wants to go into.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Just to speak to that, when it came to PNP, and I had probably at least 15, maybe more questions with regards to the bylaw. It was the first time that we had seen the amalgamated bylaw together. I mean, bits and pieces have always come to council for things like dealing with vicious dogs or when we set up the chicken bylaw. But seeing the whole thing complete, there was some items that I had questions on. And I think we felt that at the time, just to speak with Councillor Cummings here, was that we needed to sit down as council and go through it. So, and it would take too long in a P&P meeting. We figured it would be just an unruly thing. You know, we could sit there for a couple hours going through each section. And the idea from Councillor Cummings' motion was just to set up a committee of the whole to sit down and actually go through it at a separate meeting without having to take up so much time at a council meeting or a P&P meeting. And that was the idea behind it.
Councillor Ryan. Councillor Blatz.
And thank you, Mayor Dahl, through you to CEO Williams. So I guess my question then would be, and something I've given some thought since last Monday, I do believe that we do need to sit down and have a very fulsome discussion regarding this document, but I also believe that we need to have some direct public input with it, and it shouldn't be behind closed doors. And I believe that we should really have people out there about, sorry, that's not my intent. Was not my intent to bring that forward, but thank you. But yeah, I really do believe that that's what we need to do going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Blatz. Are there further questions? No, one more. Councillor Ryan, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Yeah, it's not my intention at all to do this behind closed doors. Certainly, we do need to have public input, and, you know, anytime we do any changes, major changes, we have always gone to the public for engagement with regards to this particular bylaw, in particular because there's so many different thoughts going on with regards to, you know, things like the chicken bylaw, like the vicious dogs, and so of course we would want to have input. But I think to me it's setting up a time where you have a bylaw that may not be enforceable. And why would we have something on the books if we could never enforce it or have no intention of enforcing it? And so there was a few things on there that I thought I would speak to why we would have it on the books. And there was at least one item that was already covered by I believe it was the Alberta Health Act or something like that. So why have the redundancy? So those were the only things that I wanted to bring forward. When I looked through it, I saw one or two items that were even conflicting with other bylaws. So I do think that we need to go through it, and I do think that we should always have public input.
Thank you. And to concur with the comments that have been made to date, we have been through this together during P&P and council several times, and we all do agree that it is kind of a mishmash, and it does need to be directed to for sure. And at the end of the day, once we've had it sorted out, as Councillor Cummings brought up at his first point, that would be probably a good time to have an open house for the public so that they can see the work that was done and what it looks like and give their input at that time. But Councillor Cummings?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I just wanted to make one final comment about what a committee can and can't do. So the reason why I wanted this to go to committee is because a committee has a lot broader of a mandate because it creates its own mandate on how to do something. So the intention here is to have a committee to discuss this bylaw. That committee can then say, let's have a public house over at the Legion where we have public consultation. We can put this on the line and have a survey. Whereas we're very limited in a council meeting to have a discussion about this bylaw in the creation of the bylaw. So committees do work like that. Council makes, at council meetings, we make decisions on that work. So this type of work is, in my mind, a whole lot more suited to a committee, which can then have that fulsome public engagement outside of the minimal requirements that the MGA has and having what we had today with the land use bylaw, public hearing on that specific point. So we can have an open house, we can have multiple open houses, we can have them in different areas, we can have online open houses, we can have surveys, we can do all this stuff and a committee can do that work. And I think the committee can do that work a lot more effectively and efficiently than in an open council meeting. Of course, the result, the bylaw, will have to go through our MGA process of having a first reading, a public hearing with the public present like it is today. not that one, my mistake, sorry, again, new counselor. So, then the committee does give us a whole lot more of an opportunity to have public engagement than the minimum requirement the MGA has for us to run through council with this. So it is the intention of my proposal, by creating the committee, to have a much greater involvement in the creation of this bylaw with our community than administration handing us a bylaw and us debating it for an hour or so in a public hearing or in a council meeting to move forward. So I just want to remind everyone that a committee does work. Council approves that work or denies that work. So it is a better place to have it in a committee where we can do more public engagement than we can in council.
I believe that our CEO Williams has heard our discussion around this table, and we'll come up with something. You have further items to your CEO report as well, I see, in another page.
Yeah, the final thing before getting to the topic at hand, this came in late from Red Deer County. They have actually got preliminary approval for their Universal Broadband Fund application. They do have projects underway. They're looking for funds through the federal provincial top-up right now. So what I'm asking council to do is basically make a resolution to support Red Deer County's UBF application. Red Deer County being so close, and the town for quite a while being a proponent of rural connectivity, their project aligns with our long-term vision plus our MCC ONET's vision too. So they require, given the age of their former letters of support, they have been requested by the UBF fund to update their letters of support. So they've requested one from the town of Olds.
So this is new information sharing for council. I believe our CEO is looking for direction on if you would support that at this time. So actually it would be good for all county residents for their computer, whatever, for Wi-Fi, sorry. However, speaking, I have Councillor Cummings and then Councillor Blatz.
Well, Mayor, I'm going to try to put together a motion here on my own, just to be challenging. So I move that administration prepare a...
What happened to my mic?
You're on.
I'm on. I have some councillors still that would like to speak. If you would like to make a motion, then let's just hear the table first. Thank you. Not you, Councillor Blatz.
Well, my question through you, Mayor Dahl, through to the CEO was, do you want us to make a motion to send the letter?
Okay, we have business on the floor. That's the CEO report, which requires a motion. We'll deal with that, and then we can come out and make a motion if council chooses for the letter to the Red Deer County. Any further questions? Who are you pointing at? Did you have a question? No, I was just going to make the motion. Okay. Are you done for your CEO report, and then we can open?
Yeah, I still have. Okay, so thank you all for your patience. The last hour, my estimate of 30 minutes was not accurate. So as essentially all of you are here, I want to provide background information on what the town has done with the Smart Cities Challenge and the information paper trail that led up to that decision and things since then. So there's multiple files, as you can see on the screen here. I will try to go over it in a linear type fashion to make it more understandable what we're trying to convey. So in January 2018, there was a federal application open called the Smart Cities Challenge. Olds, in partnership with the Olds Institute, the longer name is OICRD, decided to apply for this challenge. The town was not successful in this application, which we found out in July of 2018. And the competition is now closed on the website since the announcements of the winners. And so Marcy, is the website open as well? Did you get the email I sent with the link? No? Yeah. I just, for illustration's sake, would have been easier, but I could probably open it quickly here, just to make sure we're all on the same page. I'm sure we're not too far off. Do you have the keyboard in front of you, Marcy? Could you type, or me, that works.
Thank you for your patience, but we're ad-libbing to be able to accommodate you with your gallery, and thank you for coming. So we're just putting this together as we go, and then we'll go from there.
So I'm sure you're all familiar with this webpage. This is the map that has been making its rounds, with Olds included as one of the applicants across the country. We never received proper notification that we were not successful. Instead, we filter through here to the winners, and Montreal, Toronto, and Bridgewater, Nova Scotia were the winners. Olds, I don't believe, was a finalist either. We were an applicant for the $5 million stream under the Healthy Living and Recreation. And as you're probably familiar with, the winners are searchable on this page as well. So leading up to the application in 2018, we pulled some information as best we could from our files, because OIRCD is no longer an entity, so it's a bit of a black hole in trying to see what they had in their files. This was the ad that we found for a public engagement session on January 31st, 2018 at Holy Trinity School. And you can see that Olds and OIRCD were both listed. At the public engagement session, there was a report generated along with a presentation given. Opening right now is the report that was presumably gave to the attendees at the meeting. And unfortunately, we have a list of invitees. We don't have a list of who actually confirmed their attendance. So that's unfortunate. But this was the presentation given by a staff member who is no longer here, but in conjunction with OI on January 31st of 2018. And it goes through Smart City, the application, what we're thinking, what we're hoping, and giving questions for the group to work on. The result of those questions, this PowerPoint, sorry, the mouse is too far away from the computer to work properly, but I'm getting there. Any day now. This was the final document that came from it. Smart Cities Democracy was the title of it. So the scoring matrix, which before and after, put healthy living and recreation as one of the Smart Cities Challenge's key goals that were most important to essentially the town of Olds, the people in attendance at that meeting in conjunction with the town and OI. So that follows our application stream that was just shown on the Infrastructure Canada webpage of the rationale of why we chose that particular stream of the Smart Cities Challenge. From there, we then crafted the Healthy Community Initiative, which many of you have seen shared on social media of what the application itself tried to accomplish. But these are all the responses received from town residents and stakeholders at the 31st meeting based on the 4 questions that were asked. And assuming we looks like we had a decent enough turnout. But again, without actual attendees list, it's tough to confirm. So back to smart cities. This was not the first foray in 2018 into smart cities. This is something else we found not through the town, but through the Olds Institute. So the Smart City Alliance was a federal program started under the Harper government, 2014-ish. So, if I can. So founding alliance, obviously, were these organizations here: Edmonton, Calgary, St. Albert, universities, a couple tech companies. The member directory, which is still active today, doesn't show the town of Olds specifically. Other municipalities, but it does show the Olds Institute, which is not showing up right now. But we have record of the Olds Institute joining the Smart City Alliance, not the town of Olds, more or less. It looks like this organization has since been defunct, or inactive at least, but this is certainly what led to the Smart City conversation into 2018 when the challenge was announced. So that's as far back as our history goes, was a 2015, oh, here's a nonprofit perhaps, 2015 attempt by the Olds Institute or to join the Smart City Alliance. And there they are right there, under the nonprofit sector. So, again, and then further to that, there was a Facebook post from 2018, which I have the link here, just not on this computer, along with a public survey through SurveyMonkey, asking about largely the 2018 application in conjunction or to add to our in-person session. So there was a SurveyMonkey link sent out along with a Facebook video created by the town and OI at that time. So that was the public consultation piece at then. The I'll probably just get my rant over with and then, yeah.
So if you want to hold your questions, because we'll need you at the mic anyways, and he's just about done, and you can come up on the mic. Thank you very much for your patience.
So, this is the email we received, the application that was sent by the town and OI to the Smart Cities Challenge in 2018. Again, this is basically what you can find on the Infrastructure Canada website. If you've ever written a federal grant before, it's a lot of cut and paste, but there is a proper document as well, which was the culmination of the public engagement sessions and what informed the application. So this is where the healthcare side came into the community wellness recreation side. So the Olds Health Network and essentially building that application. So. And from the council's point of view, we didn't have a lot of council motions from 2018. What we had was a letter of support from the mayor of the day, essentially supporting this Smart Cities Challenge. So there's no motion on file, but I don't think that was also requested by Infrastructure Canada. Sorry? Oh, was it?
There was a motion made by council in 2015 on November 13th, moved by Councillor Harper, that the materials provided with regards to the Alberta Smart City Alliance be received for information only.
Oh, yeah, that was, the Smart Cities Alliance, yeah. So, again, the previous one, that's where council decided not to join in 2014, 2015 with the Olds Institute. But by 2018, we obviously did partner on the Smart Cities Challenge, presumably for the $5 million prize. And then, outside of that, the final thing was the 15-minute cities concept. Obviously, this is not linked in Infrastructure Canada's Smart Cities Challenge directly. The town has nothing on its books regarding it. We have not considered it, nor do we plan on considering it. It appears to be something that's more prevalent, apt for larger centers. But we did receive a lot of calls, concerns about 15-minute cities, but fortunately, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of information to share on that particular planning development item, because it hasn't come across the town's desk ever. So, but that's all I have for now.
I do see that we do have interested gallery members that would wish to speak. If you do, please come up to the mic, and you're going to have to use it for people to hear you. And Marcy can help you out in any way you need, if you can do that, if you're able. Thank you very much. We'll do. Yeah, she put her hand up, but we wanted to just finish. But thank you very much for being here.
Sorry. Do you guys know what the acronym means for smart cities at all? Have you guys looked into that? And Mountain View County is kind of where you guys are in, so why is Red Deer something that you guys would look at instead of Mountain View County?
So the Red Deer, presumably it's the previous item, Red Deer County is asking for a letter of support for their UBF application, and given that they're one of our neighbors, the recommendation kind of is that council approve that. If Mountain View County asks for something similar, by all means, they're not involved in broadband as far as I know at the moment, but it's more of a cooperation thing. Regarding the act, it did someone share or send me a picture, but I can't confirm the validity of that. There's no source tied to the picture that I've seen, but all intents and purposes, no. I don't know what's smart.
Would you like to share that with us, please?
Anybody else have it memorized? Okay.
And I would like to know where it came from, really, because I've, in the past,
Well, that's why I was wondering, what do you guys think a smart city is? Like,
There's a definition on the Infrastructure Canada webpage, but I don't think it's the one that matches what you're going to share with us. If it's the same black screen,
surveillance, I know, is number one. So that's why I was asking if that was, monitoring was number two. AI, and reporting and technology.
and what's the source of that acronym?
I think it was the World Economic Forum, and everybody knows that's a real thing. So, yeah. So, anyways, just checking, because I don't know what you guys know about the World Economic Forum in this council here, but everybody knows it's real. And it's not a good thing. And if anybody has kids and stuff, you know, for the futures of the kids.
definitely have grandchildren,
Yeah.
and they're very important to us, but thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that
You're welcome.
information with us.
You're welcome.
Yes, please approach the podium and use the mic. Thank you. The reason we're asking you to use the mic, just to be clear, is that we have viewers watching this. We have citizens in our community and other counties that are watching this, and they cannot hear us unless we use the mic.
Thank you for inviting us out and opening up the council to us. And you had mentioned earlier that it was in reference to what had happened in Thorhild. And what was sort of your understanding and assessment of what happened there?
My understanding, my opinion, just based on third-party sources, was they had a land use bylaw amendment that was actually a rewrite of the land use bylaw re-examination by a third party, a company called Green Space Alliance. A consultant firm brought in to examine land use bylaws and their, kind of update, determine their efficacy. And there was some errors, omissions, and certainly miscommunications from what I could see, that, for instance, barbed wire fences were made to be given development permit status within the county, which in a county makes no sense whatsoever. So that seems like it was more of an error than anything, because no farmer will ever take a permit for a barbed wire fence. It seemed to be the larger outrage was around the lack of public consultation within the land use bylaw rewrite. But I'm getting my information from, I believe it was CTV or the Western Producer, maybe both of those sources.
My understanding was that it was in regards to a provincial requirement across the province to start updating all of the development and land use bylaws. And I wonder if you have that on your, your vision and what your insights into some of those issues might be.
No, the land use bylaws are certainly regulated. We have to have one. That's one of the rules of the Municipal Government Act. There's been no directive by the province that we must update it. Like, as I mentioned in my previous soliloquy, the amendment today was one of 200 plus in the last 20 years that we do several times per year just to make it more current or deal with situations that weren't thought of at that time, such as a daycare in a shopping center. But no, there's been no provincial directive, and it hasn't come to council for funding for, I'll call it a rewrite, yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah. And just out of personal curiosity, what was the background on the origin of the chicken bylaw that was recently introduced?
Here in town?
Yeah, just there was an increased licensing requirement and a limit on the number of birds that people could have, and just some other stuff as well. I think it probably came out of the previous council, but it was in effect of January 1st that there was a restriction on the number of chickens that you could have, and there was very substantial fines for that, and also fairly significant registration for that. And I'm just, wondering, perhaps down the road you could reevaluate that, considering the, the times that we're facing. That what's the price of a dozen chickens? I've seen it up to or a dozen eggs up to $7. I think we should be, trying to encourage as much as possible the citizens to, find alternative sources. It seems to be challenging times, but I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I can speak generally to it. It does predate my time here. I'm not overly familiar with it, but urban agriculture in general, most urban municipalities have not yet adopted a chicken bylaw yet. Olds has, and it always is balancing that the right or whatnot of the landowner to raise chickens and produce their own eggs versus neighboring adjacent properties who may not like the sound, smell. And I'm assuming that's where our balancing act came in. But not to put you on the spot, Director Andrew, do you have any info on the January 1st date that the gentleman references?
No, what was the date of the information?
Yes, so the initial conversation and the application of the urban hen bylaw was that there was a time frame of approximately a year given to residents to comply with the provisions in the bylaw. So the fact that there was no penalties imposed on people that previously had them, we were just asking for essentially a year for them to comply. So we put out the number of urban hens that were allowed to be within a premise and the provision of the housing that they required, such as, the size of a coop and the size of the enclosure. And then the process was that the people would be able to make sure that they were compliant and then be licensed and go forward without any fear of penalty happening when the legislation came into effect in the year previous, if that makes sense.
And when are they starting those penalties?
January 1st is the provision that was in the bylaw for the penalties to start. And again, with the municipal bylaw, the whole premise was that there was a desire from residents to have urban hens, and the council of the day heard that and tried to create some bylaws to allow that, to satisfy the desire of the people that wanted urban hens, and also weigh the concerns that people would have that would not necessarily want urban hens out of control. So reference was made to many municipalities about what that appropriate number would be, and of course council is always open to the revision based on the feedback that they get from residents and or from bylaw, whether there's issues or concerns that are raised. And to date, we have not had any written complaints or concerns about the number of urban hens or situations surrounding them being inadequate or the policy being too broad, if you will. So we're always open to that feedback if there's good or bad and indifferent, and that's what drives the change.
Good, so you're recommending that if we have any issues or concerns that come up that you'd like to share with you that the best method is to write a letter to you and inform you about those concerns. So
Absolutely.
good. Well, thank you
Yeah.
for having us out today.
Yeah, that's a good comment, because, again, if we don't hear it, we don't react to it. So honestly, we try and do the best we can with Director Justin was just sharing. A lot of people think we know everything, but we don't. So if you talk to us and we collaborate together, there's got to be truth in there somewhere. We'll find it together, we hope, because there's lots of questions out there, and thank you for asking that. That was a very good question. There was a lot of demand for people that wanted chickens in town, but we had to make it work, and it's working, continues to work every year. And we get more chickens. It's awesome. Anyways, is there anyone else? Yes, please come to the mic. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Leslie, and first of all, I just want to say thank you just to the council. Certainly, I don't envy your position, the seats that you hold, just the weight that not only bears personally, but professionally. It's not something I probably would ever want to do. So I do have a two-part question. First part is can you help me to understand, if you understand, the verbiage in the difference between 15-minute city and smart city? I'm finding they're trying to make the correlation separate. However, I feel like the platform of the topic of the two is the same. So if you have any understanding, if you can enlighten us with what you may know. CAO Williams?
Actually, I'm going to use my counsel around the table, because we've been searching to learn ourselves what that means, and I'm going to open it right now to Councillor Cummings. Personally, I think they're two different things, but perhaps he has a different take on
Yeah,
it.
thank you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So there's two different concepts for each of those things that are going around. From a municipal planning perspective, a 15-minute city is simply where you live in. Sorry, can you hear me now? That's strange. I'll put it right there. Sorry, from a municipal planning perspective, a 15-minute city is a city in which, wherever you live in that city, you have within a 15-minute commute all of the things that you need on a regular day-to-day basis. The other idea of what a 15-minute city is that you as a resident of that district or area would be restricted in your movements within that district and facility, which is, say that we look at Edmonton, for instance, that's not the case. It's just a planning concept that they've introduced where you can wherever you live in Edmonton, they try to make sure that everything's within your 15-minute area. So there are those two concepts of what a 15-minute city is. As far as I know, and from what I've researched, there's no interest at all in restricting people into a 15-minute neighborhood. The cost of that would be in the billions of dollars, and a town like Olds doesn't have that much money to block you into a 15-minute walk. The other idea of the smart city has been around since technology's been around. We want to improve people's lives inside of a community using smarter technology than we've used in the past. That allows us to, say, monitor traffic flow so that we can make roads, future planning of roads, because our road plan goes 20, 30, 50 years advance of today. So it allows us to say, do we need to have a bypass road through Olds? Well, we need to analyze the data in Olds. So smart technology allows us to do that sort of stuff. Connecting our municipal fleet, tracking where our trucks go, that helps us manage our fleet just as it does in commercial. Many people who work in the private sector know that their trucks are being location monitored, right, for fleet maintenance purposes and stuff like that. So that's smart technology. The other meaning of smart, the surveillance methodology that we see on the internet all the time. Again, we don't have the tens of millions of dollars to implement an active surveillance system throughout the entire city of Olds. So we have to look at both of those concepts when we talk about each of those, because there's multiple definitions for each of those two concepts. The very convoluted concepts that they're doing in England, for instance, which of course is all over social media, which involve the city of Oxford, as well as the city of London, as well as actually 15 cities in England that have introduced what are called ultra-low emission zones, which means you cannot drive a vehicle inside of this district unless it is built after this time period. That's in London. That's where you're seeing all of these fines that are being digitally produced for people that are driving into zones where their vehicles are not allowed to drive. Oxford's system, which is in the news, is about traffic flow, and it isn't actually operational until 2014. It hasn't even gone to tender yet. The cameras aren't installed. That's still up for debate between their mutual councils. And you can find that on their council website. It's very readily available information. So that is being defined as a 15-minute city because Oxford's plan is to in the city's center core, they'll be broken up into 6 districts, right? And traveling between districts through the city center is restricted. Traveling around the ring road, around the outside of the city, is not restricted. So it makes for longer commutes. And the argument out of Oxford is, well, that's just going to be more polluting because you got longer drives to go around, right? So it's a very convoluted conversation that they're having there in England. But remember, the downtown of Oxford is not like the downtown of Calgary or Edmonton. You have horse-drawn roadways that are very, very narrow. So it's a very different type of culture than we have in Canada. Trying to do that sort of thing in Canada would be silly. I mean, make the parking lots smaller so we can't park our trucks in them, because that's what I find in the city. I hate driving in this city because I can't park my truck. That's an easier planning initiative than these. So, yeah, so when we look at those 15-minute cities, those two separate, completely different concepts, one locking you into your neighborhoods and one just making your neighborhoods more livable, those are two different concepts. And the smart city, two different concepts as well. What we think of a smart city and what the application, Brent Williams here showed us all, was to use technology to make our lives better. And the other definition of we're going to monitor you like mad because we've got an unlimited amount of money to build this infrastructure like that, which we don't.
Right, and I think...
Councillor Cummings, go ahead.
Sorry. I think that coming from the party line day, do you guys remember that? Right, and you know, as much as I appreciate technology and growth and change, and it is inevitable, it is, and it's welcomed. I welcome the fact that I can have a private conversation on a phone. However, words such as restrictive and surveillance are words to me that don't invite freedoms, that don't invite anonymity, that don't invite, what they do invite is fear. And I think that's what a lot of this is based on. And as much as I really appreciate the council and the efforts put in, going back to what you had talked about with organizing committees, is we just want to make sure that conversation is transparent. that planning is transparent, that I don't know what a smart city is going to look like for my children. What I do know is that it's changing, and it's, technology is advancing. And so I just want to make sure that my face is seen, my voice is heard, so that when my children and my grandchildren are living in this world, that it is done so in a way that is safe, ultimately, is free. Isn't that what our Constitution is built on, is a freedom to be able to move? A freedom to be able to go visit family. I mean, you guys talk about Olds not being a large enough center. I agree. But at some point, will they then not limit our ability to go to Edmonton to see family? So I just want to make sure that our conversation starts now, that we put the horse before the carriage, that we invite conversations that are respectful. I'm here because I don't know. I know, I've done reading, I'm an interested party, but I don't know, and that's why I'm here. And so I just want to invite council to come alongside people like us and have these conversations and do the research, have a committee. Let's make sure that we are ahead of this so that we're not slapped in the face with something that then's being taken away. I value our freedom. I value your freedom. I value my community, and I'm here to fight for it, whatever that looks like. I'm here to fight for it. So I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for this. I'm sure we have such a great show up of interested parties, and I think that just showcases concern, confusion. I'm part of that. I don't know everything, but I think as a conglomerate we can come together and just try and figure out what is best for our community, not even our community, what is best for like our world, right? So I just want to say thank you, and thank you for defining the difference between the two. And with regards to committees, sign me up. Because, it takes more than this, right? It takes more than just our council. And we sit here and we talk to our council members and we say, you know what? I voted you in, do our job. You have a job to do. It's not just their job, it's our job. We need to show up as a community. We need to speak where we need to be, where our concerns are, respectfully. You guys, respectfully, because they don't have all the answers. So keep showing up. Let's keep showing up. Let's keep asking questions. Let's keep deep diving. And let's just be appreciative of the fact that we have a group of people here who have concerns. Because with this, we can make change. If I showed up on my own, I can't make change. These guys can't make change on their own. So let's just come together as a community, respectfully, online even, guys. Like, we're here for the same cause. We really are. So I applaud you for coming, and I applaud you guys. Thank you so much.
Well, is there any further questions? Please come. You can both come. You're together. Come on up.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having all of us here today. My name is April Reeves. I have some information that you probably might be looking for if you do not understand this. The 2030 agenda was slated for 2050 originally. It compromises pretty much all the things that we were talking about now. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist either, so there's a lot of this stuff that is garbage, but there is a great deal of it that has actually a lot of truth in it. And I'm going to tell you guys something today that I have never told anybody yet. Okay? So the UN, United Nations, started this, and they started this before the WEF was even in place. The reason I know this is because I worked on it. Is because I have prior knowledge to what's coming forward. I know the history, I know the people in that history, and I worked on this in 1983 and 1984. And I'm not kidding. And I worked on it for 2 years, and then I couldn't do it anymore because of my conscience couldn't take it anymore. Okay? So we have, I know that you guys will do the right thing. I know you will. I absolutely know you will. but there is some stuff in here that you really do need to really take with eyes wide open. I will come to this council and I will speak to you personally at any time. But we do have to be really vigilant on this. Didsbury just announced that they bought in hook, line, and sinker into smart cities. I'm on my way to Edmonton this week to speak. I work with 5 other lawyers around this province. We are already on the Thorhild. There's Parkland has got some serious incidents at it right now. There's a couple of farms that are going to be completely eradicated, farms that have permits for their buildings, farms who have got eateries, farms who have been there for a long time. So yes, it is happening. I hate to say this, guys, but it is happening, and it's just starting. It's very small. But there's this little meme that goes out that says, if I told you that this was communism, would you accept it? We have to be careful because this all has to wrap up by 2030. It was 2050. Trust me, when in 83 and 84, I could have cared less because I wasn't even going to be around in 2050. I care a lot now because I'm going to be around in 2030 and 2040. So I'm just going to leave my information on how you can contact me. I will be at every council, as many council meetings here as I can be, but I'm slated to almost every council around Alberta right now. This is going to be my life for the next, I don't know how many years, because we really do have to understand what this is about. But anyway, I will leave you with that, and I will leave you my information. And I really appreciate, if you guys have any questions, I will answer them.
Quite a servant of service. Thank you. I have Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Thank you for coming up and speaking. I have a question, though. Which item are you speaking at? Like, we just had the definition provided with from Councillor Cummings with regards to the difference between the smart cities and the 15-minute city. Which one are you speaking to as being
They're
the
both
thing that's,
related.
hang on, being with the UN? Was it smart cities or was it 15-minute, or are you talking about both of them at the same time?
Both of them actually are correlated, but they will separate them at the front end and then they will bring them together.
One more question, Deputy Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and thank you, April, and to all the other speakers as well. A quick question. I know you're going to leave your contact information, but you reference 1983, I think, and 84, and activities you were involved with. Can you give us a 30-second Reader's Digest version of what that was or is?
Yes, I can. I will do that. So I worked for a member of the United Nations. I'm not sure I should give that name out, but you all know who he is if I did. And I, at the time, worked in Vancouver, in Gastown, on Water Street. I was graphic designer and I did corporate marketing. And we were very well known for being extremely confidential. Like you would have had to put a knife at my throat and slit me because you wouldn't have gotten any information. So they asked me to do some graphic design work. Now back then, we didn't have the computers to do that graphic design work. Right now, I could just look at something, type it all out, and not even read it. Wouldn't even faze me. But back then, we had to do what's called typesetting. So it was taking big sheets of paper, and you typed it all. I think you're nodding your head. Do you remember the big acetate sheets and the pins and everything? Yeah, wasn't that fun? Holy heck. So not only did you get to see it 3 or 4 times and, of course, proofread it, because I have a history of never doing a typo in my life, in my industry, in 4 decades. So, and I don't want to start now. So I read it all, and I read it all for 2 years. And I don't ever want to read it again. Sorry. It's really hard to say.
Very committed to this.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, sorry. I showed up here today saying I'm not going to do this.
Passionate over something, it happens.
Well, it is because it was so incredibly scary. And the scary part wasn't doing it. The scary part was getting out. Because you can't get out of these things, okay? You really have to understand what's behind this. It is not fun, and they have plans, and okay, so here's my theory, because I also know a lot of other stuff. I don't believe it's ever going to come to fruition. I think they're infighting. Did you notice at Davos, over 50% didn't show up? That's a big number. There's a lot of people that just walked away from the World Economic Forum. That doesn't mean that they're not still going to move agendas through. We still have to be extremely vigilant, guys. We absolutely have to be. I can't stress this enough. Sorry? I was doing history. Okay, anyway, thank you. You should work with me more often. You want to come to Edmonton? So anyway, that's how I knew, is that I spent 2 years putting their documents together for the United Nations. How's that?
Wonderful,
And
thank you.
I'm looking through all my boxes right now, see if I can find samples, because I keep everything.
Thank you for sharing that. And now your partner, okay?
I probably know her.
Thank you for your information sharing with that. That's great detail. Thank you. Come on up.
Hi, my name's Wendy, and I just have a couple of questions. So when you were defining the differences between the smart cities and the 15-minute cities, and you were saying that Olds did not have the funds to implement any of this, especially the sort of scary version. It's my understanding that when you're making a bid for these cities, you're getting awarded quite a large sum of money, and that money is coming into Canada through the UN. That's one thing. The second thing is, I'm just curious to know if the mayor is a member of the Covenant of Mayors, the Global Covenant of Mayors? No?
The answer is absolutely not.
Okay, awesome. So you know about it?
No, absolutely not.
You don't know about it? Okay.
No.
Well, it's quite a big network.
It sounds pretty big.
It is.
No,
It
I'm
is,
not.
and many mayors across Canada are.
Well, I'm not a big city mayor. I'm not a political mayor. I am a community mayor.
That's awesome to hear. That's good to hear. But it's not just big city mayors, because obviously Didsbury bought into it.
I wasn't aware of any mayors that I work with that are, but that's a good question I could start asking.
Well, you can look it up online, just the Covenant of Mayors, and there's over 9,000, and there are quite a few in Canada. Yeah. Thank you. Anyway, thank you. I was just curious to know if you were part of that.
Thank you. I answered your question in all honesty, and I'm not really sure I want to even look at what those people do, because right now that's not what I am.
Okay, thank you.
I'll probably ask my Didsbury mayor, though, if you're saying is she? Well, it looks like I got some reading to do. Okay, who's next? Welcome.
Hi. I just have a quick question, and that is that you made the distinction between, on one hand, a 15-minute city that is on the surface very good, and I fully appreciate your ability to go to a store, a pharmacy, a grocery, a meat shop, a doctor, whatever, in your local neighborhood, and I think that's a very good thing without having to use excessive vehicles, or we can walk in our neighborhoods, whatever. My question, and then you had your second one on the other hand, that becomes a confinement, surveillance, all those other things. My question is, to the council, how will you prevent that from happening?
Go ahead, Councillor Ryan can start, and we can add on as we, if anyone feels.
Thank you very much, Mayor Dahl. That's a really easy question to answer, and we just wouldn't pass it. We wouldn't approve it. These kinds of things don't work by one vote. It comes down to 7 people sitting at the table.
But they do work from pressure from above.
No, No, that's not true. Because I guess it comes down to the fact that we are governed by the Municipal Government Act. And if the government, provincial government said this is the way to go, would it even make sense in this community? Well, right now, it doesn't even make sense. I mean, we've not even had a conversation about this at this table. This is the first time that we've actually discussed either one of these with this council that's sitting here. None of us have even had a conversation or even decided whether or not we would even explore it even further. Right now, the town of Olds couldn't possibly be a 15-minute city, because if you lived over in East Olds, say, and you wanted to, could you walk to Walmart? Would that be a 15-minute walk? I would doubt it. Could you be over in Vistas and walk down to the arena? Oh, yeah, you could walk it, but it wouldn't be within the 15 minutes. So we wouldn't even be able to fit within that criteria. As for the restrictive thing, I think that that's just not something that I would ever entertain.
Awesome, glad to hear it.
Yeah, so.
Thing we're trying to do, even before we would even entertain thinking about that question, is get our senior population and our students moving in a bus.
That would be lovely.
That's priority, and right now, it's not quite as expensive as that venture, but it's still expensive.
Yeah, and just to further that, we have other costs involved in this community than to put our money into something that people aren't in approval of. So why would we go in that direction?
Okay, that's good. I'm glad to hear it. Thank you for having us all here to help you start the conversation, because it's important to know what's going on.
Thank you for the questions, and, education is collaborative, remember. Everybody doesn't know everything, but if we work together, we can figure it out. So thank you for coming. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think we better get on with our agenda, if that's good with everyone. Oh, absolutely. Come to the mic.
Mayor, and thank you, council, for receiving us today. We really appreciate it. I thank everybody for coming out here. This is democracy in action, and I just love to see it. And thank you for participating, and everybody, right? My name is Jim Schramm, and I just have one question. And I'm just wondering, are there any initiatives or programs or grants whereby the town of Olds receives federal money? I'll ask CAO Williams.
Yes, there are.
And could you elaborate on those to any extent?
There's one standing grant that's been in place since 2004. It's recurring for every municipality in Canada, in fact. It used to be called the Federal Gas Transfer Fund. Last year it changed to the Building Canada Fund, I want to say. I could be off base, but we still call it the gas tax, essentially, which is what royalties federal government takes and they give to the provinces for local governments. Our annual allocation is in the ballpark of $250,000 per year, and that is put towards, it's earmarked every year for our street improvement program. So what you see in 52nd Street. Then there are one-off grant programs. Like, let's say this Smart Cities Challenge, that was a one-off federal program we weren't successful for. We were successful for the upgrades to the Aquatic Center, which was announced last year. We got funded for that. $2.2 million, which we have to contribute 20% of the $2.8 million project fee. And that was through a federal program I'm blanking on right now, but it was a federal energy grant, yeah. And there's probably multitudes of others, like generally not directly from the feds, but the province and the feds oftentimes team up. Like if you hear Water for Life or the Alberta Municipal Wastewater Partnership, those are all kind of funded through the federal program, but it's provincially run.
I would assume then that these grants have some stipulations attached to them, probably a lot, right?
Quite a bit, yeah.
And are they anything that the town is uncomfortable with?
No, the thing that makes this the worst is the reporting requirements. The feds are very sticky on what they want to see back in terms of what we spent the money on. Generally speaking, I would say more than 90% of the time, including the recurring gas tax grant, is infrastructure, capital, replacement or capital builds. Everything else is ineligible, more or less, and it has to be large-scale projects as well. I believe Yeah, true. And the outdoor skating rink was one example. But usually anything below that $50,000 threshold tends to be ineligible because they want larger capital, needs to be funded from there. But the stipulations of what we have to spend it on, very prescriptive, but generally infrastructure focused, and now energy focused. So energy efficiency focused is what the aquatic center stipulations
There's
were.
no social stipulations or anything like that? Environmental? I imagine there's environmental stipulations?
Not directly, but that's how they get scored now. So if you can show that your project, especially in the competitive programs, they provide, let's say, energy efficiency, they get scored higher for funding, so to speak.
Okay.
So, yeah, and I can't think of many we've applied for directly lately besides the aquatic center, which was funded, but, yeah.
Question would be, would that be the same for county, or is that, being we're a municipality, the rural and anyways, the question is, would it be different for the county?
Well, Alberta has 360 some municipalities. They're either, some are villages, towns, cities, counties. You see municipal districts, improvement districts, special areas, for instance. We're all the same, and we're generally all eligible for so the county of Mountain View, for instance, they will receive the gas tax funding from the federal government, just probably in a bit higher amount because they have a few more people and more roadways, for instance. Then they would, but all grants generally are eligible. Now, for some urban grants, especially if it's around population funding based, it's like you see some grants are eligible 500,000 person plus. That would get rid of a lot of municipalities right there. But generally speaking, we are all eligible for the same programs.
Right, okay, thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for coming.
Can I piggyback his question?
Supplemental? Sure, we'll give you a supplemental. That's what we call it around the table. I like piggyback, though.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just thinking, back in 2018, I believe that's when the application from the town of Bowles was put in for the smart city. And at that time, man, our world was different, right? And so now I'm sitting here looking at the municipalities that have been granted I wouldn't call it a blessing of the smart cities. Moving forward, my concern is there's some sort of requirement when we receive funds such as that. I'm thankful we didn't get the $5 million, billion, whatever it was, dollars. But, yeah. As much as I appreciate grants, that's how we grow as a community. That's how we earmark infrastructures. That's how we make sure that our kids have buildings to go to school in. So I'm thankful for those. However, under the title of Smart City grants, I would implore that you guys actually have the intelligence to sit and actually maybe watch what's going on in these cities who have already received it, and that we take guard, because having received that money, I'm sure there's compliance requirements that are happening that then take away from our opportunity of being able to have a freedom of choice and movement or what have you. So for me, which is why it was sort of a piggyback question, having received grants in the past, has there been compliance requirements made to you with regards to then receiving the funds, or after having the funds is my concern. Here's the money. Now this is how you need to act in accordance because we gave you that money. That's my concern. So thankfully we didn't get that money. Let's keep our eyes on what's happening around the world, and hopefully we have now the knowledge to be able to decide whether or not we want to actually put in for another grant, Smart City grant. So that's my question, is compliance issues.
Thanks for the question. And to kind of touch on what the previous answer was, the compliance really is known up front. This is the grant, this is what you can spend the money on, this is what you can't spend the money on, and in the end you have to report on that money. And the feds are very sticky in terms of what they want to see as proof of what you spent the money on. But I guess to maybe make an inference of where this is coming from, whether it be interprovincial, different rules for different provinces with their local governments, certainly different countries. In England, they have the shires system, of course, where cities and shires are similar to town and counties in Alberta, for instance. The town of Olds owns exactly 0 kilometers of roads. We manage roughly 200 kilometers of roads. The province owns every single one of our roadways. We can't even put up a traffic camera without their permission. So to talk about surveillance in terms of anything on a roadway where we have cameras, let's say at the skateboard park or the sportsplex, for instance, mainly for vandalism purposes, they're not actively monitored. They're complaint-based. We see graffiti on the skateboard park, we go check the cameras. We get reports of a fight at the arena, we go check the cameras. But they're not actively monitored. But let's say in the Oxfordshire and the city of Oxford sense of actively surveilling license plates, we don't even have the authority unless the province grants that to us. Even speed cameras we can't put up without the province applying and them saying yes. So it is a totally different system that the Supreme Court of Canada has said in its jurisprudence that municipalities in Canada are creatures of the province. So some provinces give them very wide-ranging authority, like Alberta does, or probably the most, but even that's still limited. And you go further east, and there's 10 different scenarios for 10 different jurisdictions. But our ability to implement a smart city in the way that's being described, it would have to be dictated at least by the province, and if not, higher up. But every federal grant we get is coordinated with the province as well. There's no direct line between the federal government and municipal governments in Canada. The Constitution does not recognize municipal governments. Everything comes to the province. So every dollar we get is generally has to come through them somehow. Even the federal gas tax that I mentioned, that is run. We report actually to the province of Alberta, who then reports to the federal government of what we spent that money on. Because there always is that middleman in place. Our contact with the federal government is through our MP, who comes once a year and he explains things, takes some questions, but it is quite a different system than what probably elsewhere, certainly in the world and probably in Canada as well.
Good. Well, I'm encouraged to say it's 3 p.m. and many of you probably have things to do also as well. But you know what? You opened the conversation, and I appreciate that. And on behalf of council, thank you. Have a very good rest of your day. And I'll... Marcy, we're going to take a 5-minute recess while council can... Welcome back to the regular council meeting. We are still in the CAO report, and I would ask council at this time for a motion to receive for information. Councilor Black.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that we accept the CAO verbal report for information.
Thank you. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. And I believe we also have a resolution or motion we're looking for the Red Deer County discussion. Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Mayor. So I move that administration on behalf of the town of Olds, I forgot all about the letter. Writes a letter. Just give me 1 second. There we go. That administration on behalf of the town of Olds write a letter in support of the County of Red Deer's application for the Universal Broadband Fund.
Does council have questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Very well done. Item 10 is correspondence and information. I'll have a motion on the floor, please, for discussion. Who? Oh, Councillor Ryan?
Thank you very much, Mayor Dahl. I move the correspondence and information report ending February 13, 2023 be received for information.
Thank you very much. Are there questions to the report before I call the vote? I will call the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. We have no closed session today. So at this point, we're at item 13 for adjournment, and I'm looking for a motion to adjourn for 3:10 p.m. Councillor Cummings.
Oh, I forgot to turn it off. I so move that we adjourn at 3:10 p.m.
That's carried. No, I'm asking now. Everybody's ready. Thank you very much. I will call for the vote of council. That is carried unanimously. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you, gallery members. Thank you, Mrs. Ritchie, for being here. I appreciate you're not skiing today. Good girl.